Hello, and welcome to Binging the Force, a Star Wars watch party, where we commit the unforgivable sin of watching Star Wars and talking over the movie. Tonight, I am joined by, drumroll please, Michael, our producer.
Hello again.
Steve, my friend from Portland, and Heather, who's joining us for the first time tonight.
Hi, everyone.
And I'm going to bring up the kind of my network of fandom here that Jefferson actually used to run a British sci-fi video room at our local convention Starfest here in the Denver area. That then when he was giving that up, I took it over from him and turned it into a superhero video room that I ran for almost 10 years at Starfest. And during the time I was running that, Heather came along, who is also a very, very dedicated British sci-fi, and specifically Doctor Who fan, who wanted a space to be able to do Doctor Who related programming. And I gave her space in my room occasionally to run Doctor Who stuff. So
what you're saying is I regenerated into you, and then you regenerated into Heather.
There you go.
Spoilers.
We're the Matt Smith, Peter Capaldi, and Jodie Whittaker of.
Yeah, I'm going with her as the 13th. I'm going for me. I'm going 10th. You're going. You could be whichever one you want, but I'm definitely going 10th.
I don't really look like
this the latest companion.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve would be a companion to whichever Dr. Jefferson is. Yeah,
he's here entirely for his looks.
And so now Heather's actually my lead in programming. So running programming for me at the convention that is now replacing Starfest here locally in Denver, Galacticon, which is exactly 30 days from tonight.
So exciting! I wish I could be there for it.
If I'm Jodie, can I just have better writing?
You can have better writing.
Okay.
That might be a whole other live stream, though. That might not be this live stream. But yes, I will be snarky and say not sure how you could have worse.
This is true. This is very true.
Back to the Galactic Empire.
Yeah. Moving back to Star Wars before we get too into this. Tonight we're watching Andor episode 2.
Yep.
Before we start, though, I'd like to ask a quick discussion question. So Andor is the first and so far I think only Star Wars television show that is not using the stagecraft technology, where they shoot in that kind of dome of
volume
of CG backgrounds. Yeah, the volume is what they sometimes call it in some of the make. I think the official name is stagecraft now, but it's basically a dome that's a giant high-res monitor that they use to plug in digital backgrounds. And it was pioneered on The Mandalorian, and it was used on Boba Fett and on Ahsoka, but it was not used at all on filming Andor. For Andor, they either built sets or shot on location, and only CG'd in backgrounds where it was absolutely necessary. And so my question is, did you even notice that? And if so, do you think that makes a difference in the tone of the show?
Honestly, I didn't know. Until you just mentioned it. I mean, I'm aware of the new filming in the Big Dome, but I wasn't aware that Andor wasn't filmed that way, to be honest with you. So personally, to me, it didn't make a difference either way.
Same for me. I honestly would have assumed that it was used. I know they used it. I don't know if it's a competitor company, but I know they couldn't use the name The Volume, but they also use it on Star Trek Discovery and Strange New Worlds. I just assumed that it was used on there. So I'm actually surprised and glad that you had that knowledge that it wasn't used.
Yeah, no.
Well,
Steve,
I knew that the technology wasn't used, and I've actually was quite surprised that it didn't really register with me either. I think the storytelling is just so different that the scenery plays a much different role in this versus The Mandalorian and those other kind of close shot TV shows.
Yeah, I figured they would have used it just for the cost savings of all the environments, because even though it is a different show, it is a different feel, it does still have a lot of different kind of settings and everything, and I figured just for the cost savings of not having to go to all those settings that they would have used it.
Nope, it was the producer, Tony Gilroy, insisted on it, apparently, because he really wanted it to feel, he wanted the tone of his show to be very different from any of the others, because he wanted to see a lot more.
Yeah,
I always feel goofy using the word realistic when talking about Star Wars, but let's call it naturalistic. He wanted it to seem like a real environment and not stylized like it often is on the other shows.
Referencing our conversation from last week, what is Star Wars? That's the thing. It's like, just because it is in a different setting, and it is a different feel, it is a different look, it is a different environment than we normally would associate with Star Wars, but it's still Star Wars.
You can still be Star Wars, yeah. And I absolutely noticed it. I often do. I frequently notice, and I'm distracted by digital environments and films. Not always to my benefit, but yeah, apparently the town set on Ferrix, where most of today's episode takes place, one of the actors actually got lost on the set at one point because it's so big, and it's just it's several city blocks in size, and they really made an effort to build real locations for the actors to play in.
Nice.
I think it's interesting in the fact that it's so immersive for them as well as us. That I think this kind of long arc of a show, it seems to make a difference because they seem to be better rooted in places.
The town is I would say it's a character in the show.
Yeah, exactly.
The town, and then later some of the other environments that we're going to see later on in the series, possibly even more so, are they're characters almost. And the jungle where the flashbacks are taking place also is sort of
and that's what I was going to bring up without being too spoilery is, this season of Andor is very set driven. Later on in the series, we just have that one major set that take a few episodes takes place in. You have the town, you definitely have, people's houses, it definitely is very set driven. There are definitely outside, traveling shots, that kind of thing, but a lot of it is very set driven, I think.
Cool.
I agree.
Good question, Jefferson.
Well, do you want to dive in and see what's happening this week?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get into That Would Be Me. Previously on Andor.
Things you need to know for today's episode to make sense. We get our little flashback.
And this is important because it's going to be important in a couple minutes that he talked to the waitress at the club that he was at in the first episode about where he was from.
Yeah, I'm really happy we're doing this for the show right now because it's given me an opportunity to rewatch it, and since I saw it through when it was originally on, now I'm able to just look at details and catch things that I missed the first time, because it's like most Star Wars, it's a little overwhelming, because it's this whole environment and there's all this stuff going on, and it's nice to not have to spend time figuring out who the characters are and figuring out the story, and I can just kind of soak in the details a little bit.
Yeah, prior to tonight's episode, though, I wrote down the names just so so many characters, so many names, the planets, the main, main planet we're on tonight is Ferrix. That Canary is the planet that he came from.
I do struggle to remember the names.
Sorry, what?
I do struggle to remember the names of the characters.
Yeah.
Too.
I did shorten this sequence here that we don't have the 7-minute Andor logo sequence, that I made fun of last week, because
that's what gives us time to center ourselves and prepare for the onslaught.
Yeah, but sitting there watching that logo sequence, I'm like, okay, this will finish by the time we get to next week's episode.
Longest logo ever.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm a droid fan, so I'm just counting down when we get to see B2EMO.
Yeah,
yes.
He's pretty
great name. Great name for a droid.
So here we have our
the flashback of him as a child on Canary and
our Lord of the Flies thing going on.
Yep. Which I still say wasn't Lord of the Flies because they don't turn on each other. That I think they did have a fairly utopian society within themselves. It's only when an outside influence comes that trouble happens.
Yeah, it comes and messes everything up.
Yeah.
And we still they haven't really spelled out for us who these kids are and what they're doing here, but I don't know that it particularly matters that much.
I think you grasp it. I mean, I think that's the good writing of Tony Gilroy, is that you get it.
Yeah.
I think it was just done to explain his accent.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, if you remember, the Wonder Woman movie where they specifically gave had other actors do accents to match the lead actress's accent in Wonder Woman.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They did that in The Hobbit too, because one of the actors who played one of the dwarves, I forget them, blanking on his name right now, but he had a very distinct Irish accent. And so the two that played his two brothers also had to do Irish accents.
That's funny.
And then this guy,
This guy needs his own show. He really does.
I almost made him the signature image for the episode tonight for the YouTube poster, because I know that in the trailer you got the feeling that this must be an important character because they really focused on him in the trailer.
The reverb has to be insane when you hit those.
Yeah, but I really wanted Marva as the poster image, so that's what I used as the poster image for tonight.
Yeah. I don't really collect action figures anymore, but after watching this last night, I immediately went to see if there was an action figure of the drummer, and tragically there is not. There's one on Etsy. There's an unlicensed one on Etsy.
You might have to build your own custom figure.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to go that far.
Disney's dropping the ball.
Too many expensive and time-consuming hobbies as it is.
So we're establishing the setting of the town here. That it's like it's a company town basically. Everyone's like kind of working people. It's not Coruscant with people in the Senate and having high-end 1%er jobs. It's we're in a working class town.
Yeah, and it's not clear what they do, but again, that doesn't really matter particularly.
They work for the company.
Sure, they do company stuff, drudgery, meaningless drudgery of some kind.
They test gloves clearly.
Oh, okay, that's sure. Somebody's got to.
I think that
it's company security that's looking for him because it was company security personnel that he accidentally killed in the previous episode. So that's kind of the tension that we've got in the background here, is that we know they're coming for him. He knows they're coming for him.
I think the ambiguity of what they do actually makes it more ominous,
Yeah, what awful, sinister imperial thing are they all somehow contributing to?
Mm-hmm.
Again, talking about how Andor is a different show in Star Wars. I mean, the nuance that Tony Gilroy has given us in terms of, I don't know, in Star Wars, have we ever seen a casual relationship between two adults?
No, we haven't. And I'll tell you why, because George Lucas has the emotional intelligence of a 6-year-old.
A 6-year-old in 1977.
People are either not together, you're doing a will they, won't they, or in a committed relationship. There's not a casual relationship here, like where Bix is pretty clear about, like, we just do one night a week.
Right.
Or kissing their sister.
Yeah, and his response is, well, could the week start tonight?
We reset the timetable.
Yeah, anyone who's been in a casual relationship has had that conversation.
Timer is complete.
Marva, the introduction of B2EMO.
No, he was in last week's episode.
Okay, were they in last week's episode? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he brought up the interesting point that it requires more power for a droid to lie, so he couldn't lie.
Okay, but Marva wasn't in last week's episode, though.
Marva was not. No, B2.
Okay, the introduction of Marva is what I cared about there, because I love that character.
Mm-hmm. I do too.
Yeah, the actress is so good.
Well, she just gives something that grounds Andor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Andor's got some mom. No.
Apparently, the actress who plays her was also really taken by the set, and she would just so they built the idea was that her home is built out of old spaceship parts,
right?
And I guess it has an interior and an exterior, because the thing I read said that she would frequently just go outside and look at her home to help her get into her character more. Which kind of makes sense, because this character really spends all her time sitting at home. She doesn't really get out much.
She's a retiree of sorts.
Yeah.
With an
amazing droid. So the droid just got the same message that everyone else is getting, that basically security is looking for someone from Kenari, and so she's freaking out. It's like, we made sure that Kenari isn't on any record. It's like, did you ever tell anyone you're from Kenari? So they're having this whole conversation about how would they know you're from Kenari,
Well, they'll know, because his accent's going to give him away, clearly.
Yeah, but he never speaks when he's on Kenari.
I remember during Rogue One, they made a big deal about Diego Luna having such a thick accent that they didn't try to mask or dub or anything, and that was one of the firsts that they were really excited about, to have that ethnic presence in a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
And so I think it actually plays another big role, and Tony Gilroy obviously had a big part of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nuance that he's adding to it.
Yeah.
You know, is really important. You know, and having worked on Rogue One as well, and this is an extension. I was reading today that I think he has said, or he's been quoted as saying, that in the second season, like the last episodes are going to literally go into like up to 3 days before Rogue One.
Wow,
That'll be cool. I wonder if they'll get so in Rogue One, at the scene at the very beginning, where Andor is in, well, I can't remember the name of the city, but he's with that guy who has the broken arm that he ends up shooting because he can't let the Imperials get a hold of him. That guy is played by Daniel Mays, who's a pretty prominent British television actor. I wonder if they'll get him. I wonder if we'll see why he.
I wouldn't be surprised if they tie it directly together to it. Yeah,
Heather,
our plan is, after we go through the whole Andor season 1, we're gonna do an episode reviewing Rogue One. So
nice.
Rogue One is amazing.
Yeah,
I'll prepare some more interesting trivia facts about Daniel Mays for that.
So meeting up with Bix here. I mean, last episode he had this important thing to sell that's basically supposed to get him enough money to get going and get out of here, so that he can kind of avoid the security coming for him.
Mm-hmm.
So she had the connection to a buyer. We don't know who that buyer is yet, but that's going to be fairly important. We saw her in the kind of tunnel thing, trying to send her message to her buyer.
Right. So
And,
okay.
Mr. Jealousy. There's we don't know what his motivation is, but jealousy is definitely in there.
Well, she appears to be one of the only women on the whole planet, so is often the case in Star Wars.
Well, there can be, it's a rule of 2, her and Marva. That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
It's one of the few Star Wars references that this show has.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. Yeah, I was reading about that too, about how Gilroy really didn't, he very intentionally didn't put any references to any other characters or anything unless it was critical to the story.
Right.
Because he really just wanted it to be about what it's about and not distract people with the box of action figures that we sometimes see in some of the other shows.
Yeah, this is not a good dude. I mean, out of jealousy here, basically, he's turning Andor in.
Sure.
Yeah.
And here we have what Michael, you said you wrote down everybody's character name. What's the main, the officer guy?
Cyril.
Yeah,
Cyril.
here we've never really had a and I even hesitate to say villain, but an antagonist. Say, we don't get antagonists developed this thoroughly very often.
Yeah, definitely. We talked about that last week. That, I mean, we get a middle management bad guy who has an interior life, who has a story, who has like other people, other relationships, and we really get him fully developed over the course of the season.
Yeah, and they spend a fair amount of time on it too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think his story really helps just explain why he is an antagonist, why he is a villain.
Right.
And I definitely think he is a villain. If he had the power behind him, he would 100% be one of the most ruthless villains of Star Wars.
And we just had our tie back to the first episode, why it was in the flashback that it was the lady, the waitress at the bar who kind of knew him and seen him. He talked about Canary. She had seen his face, so she's the connection that, even though on paper it doesn't say that he's from there, that she can identify him, basically.
Yeah, that's how they figure it out.
Now the hunt is on.
That's what happens when you flirt at a bar.
And so Bix is so do we think here that Bix is doing this not because she actually wants to see him, but to kind of put him off, him turning Andor in, or kind of keeping him occupied?
Yeah, maybe a little. I mean, I don't know that we have any reason yet to think that she knows that he's done anything.
She's asked him a couple times, what's up, what's wrong with you? I think she senses he's been acting weird,
yeah,
and maybe a little distant,
And he is pretty twitchy. He's a twitchy guy. So,
and then even in
Again,
the
new
morning,
stuff for
he says
Star
the
Wars
same
here.
thing.
This kind of casual get together, which we will see the morning after on. I mean, that's this fairly new.
See, my feeling always was that she really liked him. But at the same time, she has so much going on and other priorities that she can't really prioritize him.
Exactly. Yeah, she just doesn't dislike him. She wants it casual, which is okay.
I get the impression that she likes him because she can't like Andor.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So this guy.
yeah, this guy. It's so nice that he gets a buddy, though, isn't it?
This guy.
He's worse.
He's definitely the representative of like Mr. Too Gung Ho. I mean, we've seen this character in movies and TV shows before, but getting this like just kind of blatant of like, I'm your man to take things too far. I'm your guy.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's nice though because it gives this character somebody in his corner, just to kind of show that he's not completely off base. He needs some kind of reinforcement of what he believes, or else he would eventually fizzle out.
Does he need that reinforcement? Reinforcement.
I mean,
from the previous episode, his supervisor was basically saying, "Hey, drop it."
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing is like this guy is the counterpoint to the supervisor. The supervisor was keeping him in check. That's probably a good thing.
But now he's got all kinds of encouragement because these guys look up to him.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody who's doing something for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But he definitely builds him up. He definitely builds Cyril up. He like says, you're doing the right thing, and we need to stop this, in the route, and we can't let things go too far. And if things get out of whack, then they must be smacked down.
Sure. I think that for me, the character development of this guy is really interesting because he's very bad at this. He wanted to do something, or he has a tick that makes him obsessive about this thing, but he doesn't really do a good job. He's developing how to get after this thing. And even, later when he's in front of the troops and they want him to say something.
The speech he's going to give, the really awkward speech in front of the troops.
He's just not finding his feet. So you can also tell that he's just getting fuel. The fire is starting to build in this character, which is
this other guy builds him up, so he thinks that what he's doing is right, but he's really like the worst middle manager ever, who's like, I mean, he's in his own little story. I mean, he's basically living in an episode of The Office, and everyone else is in Star Wars, and he's like trying to be more than he is. He's trying to get ahead. He's trying to advance in the company, but he's doing it by being overzealous, and he's doing it by taking things too far. And this other guy is just pumping him up, saying, "Yeah,
he's Dwight Schrute without the comedy."
Yes, I make the reference, but I've never actually watched an episode of The Office.
And he's clearly, I mean, he's a true believer when everyone around him is just a cynical, lazy slug.
Yeah. But is he really a true believer, or is it just an advancement thing for him? As we kind of to tease what we find out later about his background and what his motivation is he's just trying to make himself feel important, or basically prove to his mom that he's of value.
Look, Mom, I did it.
Right, exactly. So back to the Mud Kids.
Meanwhile,
blah, blah, blah.
20 years in the past.
Yeah, so it's the ship that crash landed, and they're trying, they're investigating. It's like, okay, what does this mean for us? He's ran up to catch them, even though they told him he shouldn't come.
Now, those of you who have kids, tell me, how old is Casa in these flashbacks?
I don't have kids, but I guess like 13, 14.
Yeah, that's about what I would have guessed. Yeah, and I do have a kid.
13 or 14.
Interesting.
Yeah, I would say about 13. Yeah.
All right, because I think he's meant to be quite a bit younger. He makes he has a line in Rogue One where he says, "I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old," but clearly he's not in the fight until after this event happens. So
True.
Maybe he just had to grow up quickly.
Yeah, I mean that kid was definitely older than 6 years old.
Well, we can always play the alien card, maybe. Because we can also talk about
he might not be human.
Yeah, exactly. And we can talk about how Mon Mothma in this looks pretty much identical to how she looked in Ahsoka, which would be like 15 years later, and she looks great for being 15 years older.
I wish I knew that secret.
Don't we all?
Yeah, they age at the speed of plot.
Yes, they do.
Is that like traveling by map in the Muppets?
Yeah, I know.
So we do actually have a spaceship. Very, very, very rare for this show at this point, but we do have a spaceship. And who could be the person in the spaceship here? You know, and he's kind of talking about that there's nothing closer. His droid is telling him where he can go to be safe, but he's gonna have to walk, to get there. And it's like he's obviously used to this. He's used to having to land somewhere outside and then walk into the city for some reason.
Sure. Which a lot of people seem to do in Star Wars. They do that in episode 1 when they go to Tatooine. It seems like a lot of people. Wouldn't it be nice to just, park outside the city and
right.
Clandestine parking.
Right, exactly.
Now, who all got stuck on this walking stick looking just like a cosplayer's lightsaber?
Maybe it is.
Yeah,
so this I got a chuckle out of this. These buses that are landing look a lot like the vehicle in the Star Tours ride at Disneyland.
Nice. So that's the great Stellan Skarsgård there playing Luthen.
I'm sorry, that is a really absurdly long walk.
Yes.
Well, we could all do with a bit more exercise. Here's the drummer. I love the way the drummer psychs himself up before he starts too. This guy needs his own show. Come on.
Well, and even the line there, heavy exhale.
Yeah. I need backstory on him.
Boom.
At least like a 20 episode miniseries, something. Come on. All right, so where are we?
So again, Star Wars rarity here. The next morning after not a one night stand, but a casual affair.
Sure.
I think it's great that this show introduces more mature storylines, more mature concepts than would have ever happened in the main trilogies.
Sure. Well, I mean, the main trilogy, any of the films, Rogue One included, they just because of their nature, they have to just zip by so fast that you just don't have time for stuff like this. And,
True.
The closest we ever get to this is the scene in Empire when Luke is recovering from having been rescued by Han, and he and Han and Leia are all in the recovery room at the Hoth base together. Yeah. That's not even very much like this, but that's one of the very few times when everybody just sits down for a second.
But I just don't see Favreau and Filoni doing
no. Their shows are paced like the films. They're really they zip by.
Whether or not they have some dead air in there or not. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, we love B2EMO.
I need him in my life.
Yeah.
Yes, we all could use a droid, right? My cat doesn't bring me anything other than come to me in the morning and yell at me.
Same with my puppy. I don't know.
Mine wakes me up in the middle of the night now. That's her new thing.
He's literally lying on the carpet next to me, just waiting for me to pet him.
Human, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Wrong.
Thankfully, he's not meowing at me, begging me to pet him.
No, I think it's on the droid note. I think it's interesting that even though Tony Gilroy really wanted to stay away from all of the tropes of Star Wars, the fact that we have the affinity for the droids, and they typically nail that, where he made another droid that maybe is one of the most sympathetic droids we've ever seen, because he has a bit of a disability, where he can't hold a charge and he's got a stutter, and so he makes this incredible sympathetic character, which is maybe one of the most Star Wars things about this show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's Star Wars is consistently brilliant about this with B2, and even going back to R2D2. It's, in this case, it's a red box, and yet it's one of the most characterful characters in the series. As you just said, he's very sympathetic. We understand him. We care about him. And same with R2D2 is a rolling trash can.
Yep.
that doesn't even talk, that just beeps, and yet he is one of the most interesting characters in the series.
Well, and with B2EMO, you experience throughout the series, the fear and the loss, and just all of those emotions you feel with him, and I think that's what really connects me personally to him.
Yeah, and they just, the fact that they consistently manage to do this with boxes and trash cans is just amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
I mean, the voices definitely are a factor.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, B2 is like a sick puppy.
Yeah.
They tried to get me with the Ewoks, but I was a teenager. I'd just become a teenager, so it didn't take. But
Yeah.
the droids,
I'm an Ewok
they
girl.
still get me.
Yeah, see, I still think that's revisionist thinking. I was 13 and I loved the Ewoks.
My husband and I argue about Ewoks all the time.
To me, that has always been revisionist Star Wars thinking, that it's people that people who were kids then 5 years later were embarrassed about loving the Ewoks,
Yeah, I can attest. I had a younger brother who loved them, and that probably helped me not like them at all.
Interesting.
I don't really recall having a strong feeling about them one way or the other.
Because you would have been what, 11? Yeah.
When Jedi
83.
came out, I was 11. Yes.
Yeah. Because I was 13. So yeah.
That was 87.
It was 83.
Oh,
83.
Return of the Jedi came out in 83.
Yeah.
Wow.
40 years ago this year.
I won't tell you how old I was.
Please don't. So a little side point: the crewmen on the ship, are the insignia on their uniforms is the Confederacy of Independent Systems, the enemies in the Clone Wars, the ones.
Okay, I was wondering about that. I was wondering if they were, if this was far back enough to be Imperials or far back enough to be Republic.
Yeah, this would be during this. I think this would be. I was trying to figure out the timeline, but
because it seems like in late 20s, early 30s. So I mean, I think it would still be during Imperial time, because
this flashback would be during the Clone Wars, I think, because this has to be close to 20 years before the present day in Andor.
Yeah,
Andor is meant to
the
be
Trade Federation.
Yeah, the TV show is meant to be 5 years before
the Battle of Yavin.
Battle of Yavin, and Andor's meant to be 26 in Rogue One, according to the Star Wars timeline book that I looked at.
So he'd be 21 in this.
He's definitely older than that, but sure.
Yeah.
Again,
that's what it says.
Age at the speed of plot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they frequently
time works differently in these different star systems.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, and according to the same timeline book, Obi-Wan in episode 4 is 54 years old, which I'm having a hard time with. He's more like 65 or more, 65 plus.
God, we'd need to look that up. But if he was, I mean, that's I'm that age next year.
Yeah,
I'm not far behind.
Actually, not.
I feel like I look good in Obi-Wan Kenobi years then. But you know what? A few years on Tatooine may do really bad things to you.
Yeah, I'm guessing it would actually.
Yeah.
I'm loving this conversation here where he's trying to book his transport, and the guy's like, well, you can have it quick or you can have it secret. You can't do both. If you're needing it quick and you're needing it under the radar, that's more expensive.
Yeah, this little exchange is great.
Working in IT for years, I've always said you can get it quick, cheap, or accurate. Pick two out of the three. You can never get all three.
And the exchange with his little assistant is really funny too.
Yeah.
And again, one of the very few alien characters in this series, and used pretty much for comedy relief.
Yep.
And not one I remember seeing, a Granick.
Yeah, me neither.
Is that what that was?
Our big rally the troops speech here. His attempt at managing his troops and kind of rallying them, and like a locker room sports speech, and he's so bad at it.
I know, you can almost feel them rolling their eyes at him.
You don't feel it, you see it.
Yeah. And that's why my feeling is that, I mean, yeah, he's a corporate climber, but I think especially compared to most of his coworkers, he's a true believer, where the rest of them are definitely not. The rest of them are quiet quitters.
Yeah, they're there for the paycheck. Yeah. Yep, scoffs. Literally said in the closed caption, scoffs. Men chuckling.
That's so harsh.
All yours. It's like he's giving them the details, and they're like, "All yours, sir. Your turn to
Yeah.
actually be inspiring." I gave him the details. You have to inspire them.
In his defense, it seems like the speech was kind of sprung on him. He doesn't seem to have
Right.
anything prepared.
Right. He basically threw it to him because he's like, "I given them the details, and they're not paying attention to me.
But,
So it's, here's
but
your
there's
chance to rally the troops."
but if
But
you're a leader, you got to be you got it. You've got to be ready for it, and you always have something on deck to do that. So I think he's just kind of he's really finding his feet with his, his drive. I think it's been bottled up for a long time, and now it's starting to emerge. So he's becoming a villain. It's good. It's good.
Yeah, and that's I mean his issue is that he's ambitious and he's fervent, but he's not leadership material at all.
Right.
Well, his speech is I'm very happy to be here with all of you.
Yeah.
Can we do a big group hug as opposed to
yeah.
let's go get him. They killed our men, like it's definitely more of a supervisor in a call center speech as opposed to a military operation.
The golf clapping. There's a very similar scene to this in an episode of the reboot Battlestar Galactica where Apollo gives a very similar wimpy speech. And then Starbuck bites his head off for it afterwards and tells him everything that he did.
Yeah, I mean, these kind of speeches are definitely a trope because I was going to cross, franchises and make a Babylon 5 reference. But
well, let me ask you guys this. This is a stretch, but it seemed like he had been stuck in his cubicle for years, just seething about like wanting to be somebody, and he has really great ideas. It might be a stretch, but it kind of a little bit reminded me of the new Joker as well, where it's the birth of a supervillain. That was what that movie is about.
Right.
But he's really kind of bad at it for a long time.
He's kind of pathetic. Yeah.
He's struggling to get out, but he's just not doing a good job, which is why I'm excited about the sequel to that movie. Yeah, to see him kind of become into the supervillain that he actually will become. Same way with this, I'm kind of excited to see how this arc of Cyril becomes a real bad guy with some power.
Right.
That's a great analogy there too. Coming from obscurity, coming from just being bad at it and finding a way to greatness in the worst possible way.
Yeah. And to Jefferson's wording, I mean, pathetic. It's read spot on.
Now this I love this because this is Tony Gilroy bringing new things into storytelling in this realm. It's like we've all experienced this. You just want to sit quietly on your transportation and get there. I mean, in the Luthen's case, he needs to be secret because he's actually on a secret mission, and we find out later he's actually a spy. Spoiler, but we've all had this experience. You just want to sit quietly on the train or the plane, and there's that person who just wants to. Now, I have experienced this as the person there. I've also experienced it as the person doing the talking. So,
but it's also clever. He uses it as a way to sneak some exposition in too, which is it's nice because it's like exposition can so frequently be just really heavy-handed, and in that case, it wasn't. It was just this little exchange, but he gives us a little more information about the planet.
Here's our poster image.
There's our poster image,
and he also can't. He knows he's a spy. He knows he's he can't be overt about what he's doing, but he also can't be so covert either, or else that guy who's obviously notices everything, wants to start conversation, may end up saying, there was this really weird guy I tried to make conversation with, and he didn't want anything to do with me.
Right. Like in every movie like that, where when the fugitives are walking down the street and they see a policeman, they turn away as if that's not the most suspicious thing you could possibly do.
Yep.
When you're trying not to be noticed by the
you always say evening, officer.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's
not that I know.
Yeah. No, not at all.
Well, cool. Any thoughts about the episode?
It's kind of interesting. If you really break it down, not a huge amount happens in this episode.
No, it's definitely a tee up for a lot bigger episode next week.
Yeah, the main story that moves forward is the flashback with the kids. That moves forward because we get to the point where they found the crashed ship and their leader has been killed, And so that's moving, but the present day story doesn't really do much at all.
Well, this entire episode is about building tension. It's building tension for things to come.
Agreed. Yeah, I really think that this was a good building episode, like you said. I remember when I first watched the series, the first few episodes I thought were a little slow in pace. But rewatching it this time, I didn't get that feeling, maybe because I know where it's going. But yeah, definitely, we got to see B2EMO, so I'm happy. But yeah, definitely an amazing series and a great rewatch for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the pacing of this whole show was vastly different than anything else they've put forward. And they telegraphed that. They said it was going to be different. I mean, it was 12 episodes versus a much shorter season. So we knew it was going to be a much longer arc, but I think it was actually great to set that up, because when Ahsoka happened, it actually, I think, took a little bit of a cue from this show, where the first couple of episodes were just really slow builds and, kind of just created a little bit of tension before that third episode of Ahsoka really kind of exploded. I'm not sure if it was an exact hit with Ahsoka, but I think that Tony Gilroy's approach was fantastic. I think the pacing kind of sets us up for what we're going to get and how it's going to proceed. And I think it sets up all the right tensions and all the right conflicts and all the right heat in the teases in the right places.
Cool. Yeah, next week, episode 3, we're building this tension to Reckoning.
That doesn't sound ominous at all.
Yeah, so hopefully we will see some of you next week, and we'll get this out there for those of us watching, for those people watching on the YouTube. Like and subscribe us there at Binging the Force. If you want to watch this live, you can watch it live. Look for us on Facebook as Binging the Force. We publish out when you can watch us live. You can watch us live on there and on Twitch as well. That's also the Binging the Force. And if you want to listen to this after the fact in a podcast client, use any podcast client. Just look for Binging the Force. And thank you, Jefferson. Thank you, Steve. Thank you for joining us, Heather. It was great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It was very fun.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. See you next time on Binging the Force.
Thanks, everybody.